Hi guys, I want to get on here real quick again. Again, this is my lived experience. So if you're having questions about any of this stuff, please consult a professional. But I'm putting out my story to help other people in my family and also myself. And also because these people keep harassing me. Certainly I have family members that continue this. And it's been devastating, not only because of the extreme way my divorce was handled, but the legal ramifications with the lies that were made up. I mean, I've been put through absolute hell. I lost all my assets. I have very little right now to live on, and I'm trying to go forward with my life. Which is why I'm speaking out. And law enforcement certainly needs training, and they need to get up to speed about what's going on. I posted some videos about good touch and bad touch, certainly with children. Again, age-appropriate things. Again, I'm not an expert, so I'm posting this stuff. And then I posted sexual consent in New York State is actually 17. So I can remember when my cousin was pregnant at 16, the pressure to have sex, certainly in those age groups. And most of the guys were pretty harassing back then. And what the problem is now is these men have continued this, and certainly they get together. They have been violent towards me. They've harassed me. And here my cousin was pregnant at 16 and had a baby. And she continues, the family continues, the police department continues, these judges continue. So across the board, we need training, we need protection for victims, and certainly this whole thing with historic child abuse. You know, oftentimes, and I certainly did with myself, people say, why don't you move forward? Why don't you move forward? And I did numerous times. Because that was, well, it's no big deal. Move forward, move on. Don't let it get you. They used to call it ass busting, you know, which was the earlier term for bullying, and it was very acceptable. This stuff went on all the time. I mean, harassed because I was called thunder thighs because I had gained weight in high school because of the abuse. So I was repeatedly bullied in the bathrooms. I was repeatedly bullied because back then, we didn't really have jeans for girls, certainly not curvy jeans. If you guys remember, some of you, my older followers, if you remember the boys' Levi's, if you didn't get into those, which were pretty straight, you know, you sort of got called out. So I didn't go to any of their parties, and I'm certainly glad nowadays because I run into these guys and their first thing is high school was their, you know, the highlight of their life. Oh, don't you remember all those parties I had in high school? Here you're talking to a 50-year-old man at the time, a couple of them. And I'm like, no, I didn't go to your party. And you know what? Parties. And they were legendary. It was like a 90210 for my high school. They're all really like good football players and, you know, wealthy from good families. And yet this was the dark side of a lot of this jock culture. And I can remember sitting there laughing a couple times being out and not seeing anybody for a long period of time and running into these people, and they're talking about high school and why didn't you know, you didn't go to my parties? No, I didn't go to your parties, and I'm so glad. So there's something to be said about being the quiet one. You know, you know, they'd call you a book nerd, or you weren't popular with the guys, or, you know, there's something to be said about waiting and being a late bloomer and not being involved in this stuff, because certainly when you have grown adult men like this, some of them are grandfathers, going on about high school, it's certainly, you know, it leaves a lot to be desired. So this is partly why I started this channel, and I'm really excited where we're going, even though my life was ripped apart and shredded by these people. This was right before we started talking about more of this stuff, and more of this stuff was coming out, and law enforcement in other places is starting to move forward with this stuff, and people are being held accountable. So I just want to make sure, I wanted to correct that about it's 17 in New York State. I thought it was 16. So certainly that changes some of this. Certainly because of the constant harassment that continues, and certainly now. Because I was 14 when we moved to Fort Johnson, and my ex-husband's family lived there. I find out one of his cousins was a police officer who recently passed away. And there's been other police officers involved, and they continue this sort of harassment. So it is actually 17. My best friend and cousin was, had her baby at 16. I was 15, and these people, and the reason why I'm bringing this stuff forward is because these men continue, and we know a lot of this is about power. So they all have continued. They went down, said some horrible things on police reports about me. I was sexually assaulted again, which is why I'm speaking out, because unless we make this stuff stop, it's not going to stop. And it can be devastating across a victim's life. It certainly was mine. Shout out to Lindsey Boyland doing all this great work here in Albany here, because every workplace that I worked in, there was degrees of sexual harassment. And these guys get very competitive and grudgeful and vengeful about this stuff. I know my ex-husband's very vindictive. And certainly he hasn't had a lot of things go wrong in his life because he's very protected by people. But certainly if he thinks someone's wronged him, he can really, really, that's why I was so afraid of him for a long time. And it's not like something that I would verbalize, but any woman who's married to a domestic abuser knows that there's things you just don't do. There's things you don't question. You try often to appease and do the right thing and walk away, but it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better. And it's criminal. It's criminal. And so I want to continue to talk about these things. And I certainly want the harassment to stop in my life. And these people need to stop, and they know who they are. And I will continue to speak out about this, because nobody should suffer over a lifetime. And certainly it has to do with boys too. Many of these men were also sexually abused or have stories in their life. I have male cousins that dealt with a lot of this stuff, and these people continue. I have family members that continue to be abusive, and they continue to get a free pass by law enforcement, by our court system, and certainly they were aware of all this stuff when they went to do my divorce, and it was an absolute train wreck. So I will continue to speak out for victims. We need more services. We need more support. We need more advocacy for victims. No one should have to live their entire life being, hunted by these people. And that's the way it feels like all the time, whether they cause problems at jobs, whether they cause problems when you make a friend, whether they cause problems in your dating life. They just continue this behavior. So once again, it's 17 is consent. In New York State. So actually it was statutory rape with my ex-friend there. And the only reason I bring this up, people ask why you keep talking about it, is because she continues, because she's in her new relationship with a person that works for National Grid, and the harassment has continued with her, my own mother, my ex-husband, and some of these other people that have been sexually inappropriate for a long time. So we can get into talking about how females are also involved with this. They encourage this patriarchal power exploitation towards other women. Certainly I've experienced it, and it continued to be, even throughout my divorce. You walk into a courtroom, you're being called a whore and a prostitute, and all your rights are denied. Your assets are denied, your rights are trampled over, and this is the kind of judges that we have in Amsterdam. Be safe out there, guys, and we'll continue to talk.